Think.
Oh yeah, you got.
Clapperboard.
That's like a bunch of seals. Yeah. We're in Modern World Studios today.
Right.
Old haunted mine, and we've got someone who doesn't really need much introduction. He's Mike Exeter. If you don't know who he is, Google him. Quite simple as that, really. So we're going to talk today not about technology. So we're not going to get all nerdy about mics and preamps and positions and stuff like that, because neither of us actually care much for that, as much as you might think. Being in this business with the technology, it's very, very important. Yes, it has its place, but what we're going to talk about is actually the musicianship and how to get a band or an artist to perform well.
Yes.
So we chatted earlier about this, Mike, and this is why we're doing the interview today. It's because it inspired me that, yes, there's someone over after my own heart here. You've got a band in. Where do you start with them?
Before you go anywhere near the studio, you start with kind of feeling where they're at as a band, where their songs are at. I'm a massive lover of pre-production and rehearsal. I think it's very important that that a band can play together as a band when they go into a studio. It's kind of known as old school now, but I think it's very, very important that a band should have fun playing their music, and it comes across in the recording. And although sometimes you can't get away from doing everything piecemeal, modern production sometimes dictates that everything has to be absolutely gridded and tight. A lot of the time I think people have lost recording as a band. You get the singling out a guitarist in a band who may have a Pro Tools system or a Logic system. He does all the songwriting, he demos it up, it's brilliant, but the band never actually get to play it until they go out live, because they actually build on the demo in the studio. And I kind of got away from that a bit, because I've worked with some bands who have done quite well in their careers, and they play together.
Because we're not saying there isn't a place for
absolutely
for the absolute high tech precision, because commercially it is it's
genre led, totally.
Yeah. However, it is nice to keep the dream alive, isn't it? Yeah. And work with musicians who can perform and get an energy. And I think we were talking about the energy and that magic of performance earlier, not just in the studio but live. And those two should really cross over. I mean,
there's a massive difference in. I'm not anti-click tracks. I'm not anti-people overdubbing it, anything like that. But there's a massive difference when a band overdub parts to a click and go on the click and on the grid without really concentrating on what happens when they play together, because when you watch a guitarist and a bass player follow a drummer's body movements, it doesn't go like that. There's a surge, and that energy comes in. It can be a holding back to surge into a final chorus. Those things are almost imperceptible, but the energy is different. So sometimes you kind of need that build up, and other people would say, well, that's not tight, but it's a different kind of feel, and it's all about the feel for me. So it's just a different way of doing things, and I like it that way.
You say it's all about feel. So say you've got a band in, the feel isn't happening, the magic isn't happening. What would you do to encourage that spark? I mean, obviously you may well have heard the band in the first instance. You're working with them, you're thinking, these guys have got it, but how do you encourage that in the studio? What methods do you use?
It's a psychology thing. You've got to, I think, you've got to make sure they're all in the right mood. Comfort factor's massive. So if the energy's low, you've got to make a call on whether there's any way of bringing it up to a level where they can record that day. Or you may have to write off or start a different song. It's for me, it's like you can't just switch on that energy. You haven't got a live audience there. A live audience can just really sort of force a band forward. So that brings it out of them. It's difficult. Sometimes it ain't happening. I mean, one of my favourite personal turnaround moments in recent years was listening again to the first Rage Against the Machine album, knowing that they'd recorded in the studio with a PA and invited all their mates down.
Yeah.
So they performed to their audience and they had fun. Now, that's a brilliant, brilliant album. It's so simple. It's brilliantly played. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but the energy's there. It's of a moment. And what comes across for me, talking technical, is it was mixed by a brilliant, brilliant mix engineer, Andy Wallace. There's no excuse. He had a recording console, an SSL. He used maybe a couple of bits of outboard, probably. A couple of reverbs, a couple of delays, all automated, great band. That's a seminal album, it's awesome. And it all came from that performance and the simplicity. And I think that's what, in the last few years, made me turn around and think, hey, you need to reevaluate the way you're doing music, because there was something about being stuck to a computer screen the whole time that was driving me mental. Not least, I was starting to really lose nearsighted vision, and I was like, I can't stand this anymore. And so to get back in front of a pair of speakers, shut your eyes and listen. I've been involved heavily in writing sessions over the last 10 years with some of the bigger bands, and the amount of times you just see everybody in the room has just got their eyes shut, and you kind of join in, and you hear the odd bit of snoring because they're getting old now. But you do get this sense of they're immersed in the music, and I think there's something about not being tied to the computer screen that makes you become more part of the whole process, because you have to learn the song in your head, you have to learn the structure, you start thinking again in bars and beats
rather than transient
rather than
waveforms.
looking at that. Yeah. And there's a place for it. I mean, Christ, it's so easy to edit, but there's something about the magic of people playing together, and you taking it back maybe to when we used to put records on. Or you listen to the Friday Rock Show or John Peel's show, whatever you kind of were into, and you'd put that record on, or you'd listen to that, and you just go, yeah, that's brilliant. That music took you somewhere, and it's not onto a computer screen for me.
No.
And I'm not a Luddite at all, because I mix in the box a lot of the time, so I totally get it's all got its place.
Mixing aside,
Yeah.
because I mean, mixing's mixing.
Mm.
If you and I both agree, if you recorded it really well, the mix should really do most of itself. Yeah. But capturing that, I mean, the workflow with reel-to-reel back in the day, and I know it was a pain because it's hissy and noisy and slow and splicing, but the workflow was good. I remember having to rewind the tape.
Yeah.
And then you have the head back up, and you know where you were by how fast it was going back.
Yeah.
But you weren't led by the transients on the computer. I
No.
see where you're going with that. But you're more in bars and beats, you're more focused on the music, and I guess you're more in touch with the emotion at the time.
Totally. You become part of the process. I mean, I got back to using pen and paper quite a lot as well. And I noticed I was doing some recording earlier in the year, and I was making notes, and I was just looking at the computer display on the desk for time code, and just making notes of when the take started, and I suddenly realised I was mapping out songs like I used to, and verse
like a storyboard.
And it was basically then going as I went along. I'm just listening, and I knew, because the band are all playing together, they're not playing to a click. I knew that verse 2 had a snafu in it, and then I'd make a note of that, and then the next take we'd just maybe do 2 or 3 takes, and I'd have a roadmap written down. By the time they'd done 3 takes, they would come and listen, and someone would point something out, and I'd go, we got that on the 3rd take, we got that on the 1st, and I could comp very quickly.
Yeah.
On the computer, I'd go to the computer and do it, but I could comp very, very quickly.
You mentioned about not to click then. So to click or not to click, I know it's not a general rule.
Just
in which circumstances?
Just depending on whether it helps. If it helps define sections, if something's got to be maybe synced to a sequencer for MIDI stuff or whatever, great. I mean, you can map click tracks and tempo map and all that kind of stuff. But if a click is going to get in the way, if I've sensed that the drummer's the slightest bit uncomfortable, or he's being forced into it by a band member who's maybe the guy that's the guitarist in the band, who's got the Pro Tools system that is in charge of everything, because that's the way you make records. if someone's uncomfortable, it's got to, at first instance, be fucked off. Basically, that you've got to try the stuff where everybody's comfortable. If it doesn't work, then we try it without the click for a few takes, see if we can cut something together. If it ain't happening, then we'll try it with a click. But generally, it's another one of the studio cliches, the old adage, if you can play to a click, you don't need it. It's quite true. Some drummers are frighteningly good without a click.
Yeah, I found the same thing.
You know.
Yeah, I found the same.
Some are frighteningly crap. And
some are frighteningly crap on the click.
Yeah.
All the feel goes out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, you can do these things where you encourage you encourage them to start with a click, and that's one I use. If it's a newer song and they haven't done as much pre-production as I like, I'd encourage the drummer to just maybe play along with a click with stick clicks for like 30 seconds, and knock the click off, and then get him to count the band in. And generally, the whole band are kind of lulled into that, and they may get excited, but you can. Not with time stretching or anything, but you can cut a tape together with quite varying tempos to a certain degree.
You can get away with quite a bit,
yeah.
can't you? Yeah, there's some classic songs out there that vary in tempo quite a lot. Anyway, but it's because it's supposed to.
Yeah. As long as the song doesn't suddenly drag. That's the one that I think is the most noticeable. You get a really great chorus and then it suddenly goes, and it's like, oh, that's energy gone. But if you're keeping the energy in and you're getting to the end, I love it when you watch the band and everybody's having a little listen in the control room and they're tapping their feet, and by the time it gets to the maybe there's a solo followed by a half verse going into the final chorus, and everybody's like kind of doing that. It's job done, isn't it? The energy's there, and that's what I love about recording the band together. It's instant gratification.
Takes us back to Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, you've got this incredible performance laid out for you. You're not going, okay, well, we've got the drums, let's go and do the bass now. You've got everything there. The downside for people who aren't as versed in it is they think they're pissing away hours of studio time. But say it takes you 5 hours to get the band comfortable with drum sounds, the band set up, you've got everybody kind of feeling comfortable. Spill's not so important because they're all going to be keeper parts. You get them all together, you get all their headphone mixes fine, the comfort factor's back in there, they go to do a take, they start self-producing, as we were talking about, suddenly they're unaware that there's a control room there, they're talking about the arrangement. They self-produce, you capture it, you make the notes, you get on with it. Maybe 20 minutes after you've rolled tape, you've got the song.
Yeah. Totally.
Then it's fairy dust on top.
Absolutely. The rest is just candy.
And then you use the technology and you go, he's played that inconsistently every time. Or a band just can't quite get that one lick between them. So you nick one where he got it right and you nick the other one where he got it right and you put them together. Yeah, you can fudge it.
But do you think the audience these days have become less forgiving? I mean, back in the day, I listened to Pink Floyd and I love the mistakes. I love the intonation out on the guitar. I love the flat note on the vocal. I really love those. But these days, everyone has perfection. Everything's timed and tuned. Do you think that the audience these days will forgive these mistakes in modern production?
I don't know. I think they become so used to the perfection. I hear people I've worked with saying every chorus should be the same. It's like, well, I don't think it should. And I get this from experienced bands who are fucking brilliant live, and yet they turn into strange creatures in the studio because perfection is attainable to them. And it's like, but
it's not realistic, though, is it?
And I've had arguments, like, go on, just give us it all the way through. Well, he's already done that chorus. Yeah, but I want a double. Well, can't you take that chorus from there and pop it there and do the swap over? And we've all done it. I've comped a double. Hey, clever me. Great, but he's here. He knows the song. Let him play it twice. He's enjoying playing. Everybody who plays an instrument, unless they're having the most nightmarish day, in which case they want to be at the pub or out of here, they want to perform. Because there's nothing greater than just sitting down in the groove, playing, going, oh, I'm fucking loving this. I don't want it to stop. So you can get 3 or 4 takes out of someone doing a double, whatever, fairy dust guitars, anything. You can get it out of them. And you find once a band start really grooving in the studio, they want to perform again. And that's without an audience. So if you can just I don't know, mould them into having fun, it comes across in the playing.
It's the quick wit as well, isn't it? I mean, you and I both very dry. We just say it as it is. We're on heart on our sleeves.
Yeah.
And I think if the bands pick up on that, they feel comfortable with you. They can
Of course
say whatever
they
they
do.
like. They're not feeling some sort of, I've got to be careful what they say. Just be you.
Yeah.
So one last thing I want to talk to you about that we were talking about earlier, very interestingly, and it's a subject that people have been talking about, vocal recordings, especially with rock music.
Right.
And everyone seems to be precious these days about, I've got this U47 clone, it's got a new set of valves in it, I'm using it in yes, it's a new company in Japan's made one, it sounds amazing. Tell me about 57s.
57s are ace, 58s are ace, SM7s are brilliant. I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm missing something. I'd like to think I can hear quite well. Some of the critiques I've had online would suggest otherwise. Burn in Hell was a favourite of mine. That was
nice.
good. Yeah, I think they were quoting the Priest track as well, which was quite clever,
Yeah,
really.
it's very good.
Until they hid and blocked me before I could answer them. But yeah, so I hear okay. I was a hi-fi nut. I loved the Floyd, so I used to listen into the albums. But ultimately, I don't really. Once I get lost into the music and the emotion of that, I don't really care too much about whether it was recorded with a. I mean, the Floyd, Christ, they used to use 609s, 906s. You know, the flat Sennheiser.
We used to have red seal listening
Yeah.
sessions and gold seal listening sessions to Floyd. Yeah.
So they're using these mics which you now would hang in front of a cabinet.
Absolutely.
That's a vocal mic. It's a dynamic. It's got the same capsule as loads of others. It's a German mic, you know.
But it would hang over a cabinet.
Hangs over a cabinet. They use them as vocal mics, you know. You see, you know, one of the things that I wish people would really look at is YouTube videos, buy DVDs if they still sell them of. It's like Making of Pump. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Way better than the Making of the Black Album.
Yeah.
Pisses it. Steve Tyler's there. He's got a fucking SM7 most of the time. Then he's in there doing something else. There's no way that at any point during that recording some of those vocals weren't kept. And I remember watching a documentary on Sting. Okay, he was using C800G.
Yeah.
But every time he went to do an overdub on anything, he'd go to Abbey Road to do a choir, he'd go somewhere else to do something, they cut a lead vocal with him. Every time. So he's in different rooms all over the place singing a lead vocal so that he might get a different vibe from the environment he was in. They would comp the shit out of that.
Really?
Can
it's
you
a bit
hear
like
it?
ADR on video. No, can you hear it? No, you can't.
Does it sound like a good performance? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
They were all performances. So where I stand with it is if it's the right thing for the job, great. If a singer is used to being on stage performing and he's got a 58 or a 57 in his hand and he loves looking down at it, that's the right mic for him. If you put him in a room where he's surrounded by all this acoustic treatment, he's isolated, he's got a microphone in front of him, he's been told to do that to get that distance from the mic,
Or the pop shield.
please don't move, you know, and suddenly he's completely out of his comfort
And
zone.
headphones on.
Headphones
Not
on.
monitors.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, you stick a 58 in a control room, blare the main monitors, get the guy to perform. You'd be amazed how little
Well,
space
how many
there
good
is.
records have been made like that?
Well, my favourites, you know, Freddie Mercury used to perform.
Manic Street Preachers.
Yep. Paul Rodgers.
Pill, Johnny Lydon.
Yeah.
I mean,
Most-
Paul Rodgers,
Yeah.
Queen,
Oh,
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So,
Dynamic mic in the control room.
yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
Every time.
Because, you know, people have a perception of what a microphone sounds like. They don't necessarily give enough credence to what it feels like for the performer. You know, you can offer a guy a guitar to play because it might be a better guitar. But he's not comfortable playing it. He's not going to play it as well as his favourite bashed up, you know, old telly.
So what
So-
we're getting at really is
Make them comfortable.
make them comfortable. Musicians, they're strange creatures, aren't they?
Yeah, we are.
We're both musicians too.
Yeah.
So we know.
But
Anyway,
always try and put them at ease. That's the thing.
put them at
Always
ease.
put them at ease. And they generally aren't being idiots because they're trying to make your life difficult, maybe 1%. just have it in them. There are certain names who most people in the industry would go, oh, but they aren't trying to make your life difficult. They're nervous. They just want it to be over. You know, singers especially. Just, you know, oh God, my throat's closed up. It's like, you make it easy for them.
Every single singer I think I've ever worked with has some excuse to why they're not going to sound as good as normal. But by the end of the session, hopefully, they're at ease enough to be able to give us a good performance or three.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mike, thank you ever so much for your
pleasure.
time. We're gonna stop rolling before the rest of the rabble come back here to Modern World. And thanks to Mike Banks today for putting this on with the SSL events today that we've been having some fun doing. Yeah. And we'll see you on the next interview. Cheers.